Yes, please record. And for anybody who was online voting, for our board members, that has been completed. So we're ending that. Um, so basically what we're trying to do with these forums is to introduce you to the candidates. There are no gotcha questions. We gave the candidates all the questions before. They did not receive the lightning round questions, but those are more fun than anything. And so part of what we're just trying to do is to educate our members, our community, and anybody else who wants to just watch. We are a 501c3, so we cannot endorse, but we can educate and we can outreach. So that's what we're doing tonight. So I welcome you all. Thank you to Sunnyvale Community Services for hosting us. And we will kick off. I would just have a little bit of advice for the candidates. A good friend of mine told me, or she told my daughter, be yourself in your interview. So be yourself. That's who we want you to be, and that will be the best for everybody. So welcome. We will start off with opening statements. And David, you will go first. I'm going to let you use that mic, and you guys pass it.
Okay.
Please.
Is this working? All right. Thank you so much. I want to first of all thank Community Services, Sunnyvale Community Service for hosting. It's great to be back here. This is one of the model facilities in the region, so really excited to participate here. And thank you to Livable Sunnyvale for hosting. As some of you know, it's been a crazy 24 hours for me because of attacks on my campaign last night, but I'm happy to be here because my focus is on discussing the issues that matter to the residents of the district. I currently serve as a San Jose City Council member in my 6th year after 14 years on the school board, and I've been working on a lot of these policy issues that are relevant to Livable Sunnyvale, building more housing, making sure that we have affordability, address our affordability crisis, address transit, improve transit. I serve on the VTA and Caltrain boards, and it's really important to me that we have a transit system that works seamlessly throughout the Bay Area. And so I've been focused on getting housing started in the district that I represent in North San Jose. I represent the part of North San Jose that is supposed to have 40% of all new homes built in the city over the next 10 years. So when we look at our housing element with 62,000 housing units, 24,000 of them are supposed to be built in my district. So I've been working closely with the development community to figure out how to provide the right incentives and the right fee structures to make it affordable for them to be able to build. In addition to that, when I started on the council, there had been no new housing developments built in over a decade, and that's because the county had sued the city. And rather than wait for the lawsuit to settle through the courts, I brought the county and city together and got the lawsuit settled. And now we're building. Over 3,000 units are under construction currently, and I'm really excited to talk more about my approach to getting to making our communities more affordable in the long term. So thank you so much for hosting.
Next will be Scott, and he could not be here tonight, so we have a video from him.
able to attend tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to address you via video, and I apologize for being unable to attend tonight. I really wanted to be there because housing, equity, sustainability, and transportation are some of the highest priorities for Sunnyvale, the entire district, and the state. Let me tell you a little bit about myself and my motivations. My entire family was sent to Japanese American internment camps during World War II. After the war, my grandparents started back from scratch, but they worked hard, and with the help of my grandfather's Social Security, school financial aid, and a VA loan, my parents were able to go to college and buy a house in Union City in their early 20s for less than $10,000 down. Growing up, we knew we were lucky to be here, and also knew the best and worst of what government can do. That inspired my service in the Obama White House as an attorney, Navy Reserve officer, planning commissioner, and now council member. I'm running for state senate because I see what's happening with ICE in our communities, the same thing that happened to my family, and I have a personal commitment to protecting immigrants across California. We also need to make everyday life in California more affordable for working and middle-class families, deliver universal health care and universal preschool, and stop Donald Trump's attacks on our communities. In the Navy, we have a commitment to leave no one behind. I try to take that approach to public service. Leaving no one behind means focusing on housing, sustainability, and better public transportation. And as a city council member, I have fought to make it easier to build affordable housing, secured funding for homeless services and assistance for renters, expanded bus and bike lanes and our electric bus fleet, worked to make a local difference on climate, and stood up for our immigrant community. I look forward to engaging with you in the future. Thank you again for the opportunity to share brief remarks, and best of luck to the candidates who were able to join you tonight. Thank you.
So thank you, Scott. And Linda, you have 2 minutes, and Carter is actually doing our timer, so you'll notice some signs if you need it.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Linda Price. First of all, I'm not a politician. So I have been an educator, an adjunct professor in 8 universities in the business and communications departments in the Bay Area schools. I've also owned my own business, providing leadership, team building, and business communications to companies worldwide. I'm a Christian, conservative Republican, and I'm running to protect families and bring responsibility back to Sacramento. I'm going to work to restore common sense, accountability, and community strength. I'm running to bring back affordability. It's the housing, the gas prices, the food. We've all been there. Safety in our communities, and making California accountable. Some of my priorities: ending fraud, waste, corruption, and abuse. The taxpayers deserve accountability. Making California affordable, and making communities safe. I decided to run because I kept hearing the same thing from people, especially the younger ones. I don't know if I can stay in California because it's just not affordable. So young people are thinking that they have to leave because hard work doesn't always lead to opportunity. They feel they're being pushed out. So I care deeply about making this state work again for everyone trying to build a future. I think that we deserve more from California, and I want to see California restored to the golden state that it once was when I first got here, with practical leadership, real solutions, and one community. So with your support, I think it can be done, and that's why I'm running, to get those opportunities back. Thank you.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. My name is Ann Kepner. I am a resident of the city of Santa Clara, so your neighbor to the east. I've lived in Santa Clara for 32 years. I'm 57 years old. I was born in Connecticut. My father took a job with a small company called Intel in 1974, and so we moved out west. And I am the last one here. My sister has moved out of state. My mother's passed away, and my father lives in Central California now. And I am the product of the public school system here in California, or in this area, from kindergarten through law school. I graduated in 1995 from UC San Francisco School of Law, then called Hastings, and began my practice of law in San Jose in 1995. And in that role, I have worked and advocated for individuals throughout my career, taking on large corporations, taking on public utilities at different times, et cetera. In 2014, I ran for the West Valley Mission Community College District and secured a seat on that board and have served there and serving in my 12th year on the Community College District, which has afforded me an opportunity to better understand the opportunities we have in the state of California for education opportunities, for work training, and really to create more assets and resources for our community members. I've also served on a number of nonprofit boards, from the YMCA to the Mission City Community Fund, and really have a strong sense of the strength that we find in our communities, and was motivated to run in part because I see opportunity, but also because my daughter, who's now 30, I have 3 children. My daughter moved out of the state of California in January of this year with the explanation she did not see a future in California for herself. Despite doing all the right things, going to school, getting degrees, she didn't see the opportunity for a good paying job or for being able to afford a home, which is, I know we're going to talk more about tonight. Thanks.
And Raymond, thank you.
First off, good evening, everybody. Thank you, for hosting this event. I want to thank everybody in the audience for coming here as well. I know, 7 p.m. on a Wednesday night. It's not that easy. I'll start off by introducing myself a little bit. My name is Raymond Liu, and I'm proud to serve as the youngest city council member ever in Fremont's history. I'm running for state senate because I believe California is at a crossroads, and the people who are being asked to live with the consequences of today's decisions too often don't have a real voice in making them. Right now, the biggest issue facing our state is affordability, especially in housing. As the only candidate in this race who does not own a home, I am living the reality that so many young people and working families across California are facing. I don't benefit when house prices go up. Instead, I feel the effects of it, just like millions of Californians who are wondering if they'll ever be able to afford to live in the places that they grew up. Over the past year on Fremont City Council, I've been focused on delivering real results. We've built over 500 affordable housing units that are already housing residents today, and I've worked to also expand public Wi-Fi access all across our city so that families can have the tools they need for work, school, and other emergencies. But this race really is more than about policy, it is about accountability. I've made it clear and I've made a pledge that I will not be taking any money from corporations nor take any money from special interest groups like APAC, because I believe that our government should be held accountable to the people. I've also spoken out about the growing influences of industries like gambling, where we're seeing an explosion of ads that are impacting vulnerable people and preying on their addictions throughout the state. I'm proud to say that I am not taking money from those companies either. Ultimately, I'm running because I believe that we need a new generation of leadership. Leaders who are willing to take on the tough issues of today, challenge the status quo, and actually deliver real results. I look forward to our conversation tonight and to earning the support of everybody here. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. Livable Sunnyvale has 4 pillars: housing, sustainability, equity, and transportation. So we craft our questions around those. The candidates did get the questions before. So we'll start with our housing pillar, and you have 1.5 minutes to answer. The question is, the California legislature has passed a number of bills over the past 10 years aimed at accelerating housing production. The results are at best mixed. Sunnyvale is behind on meeting our housing element goals, and we hear from builders that most housing projects do not make economic sense. They don't pencil due to the high interest rates, high construction costs, and high fees. What legislative priorities do you support to increase housing production? Linda, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, over the past decade, there have been 9 laws and bills that have been passed to fix housing, like SB 35, SB 9, and they're aimed to accelerate housing production and override local controls. All through this, though, you're absolutely right. It's been the results have been mixed. So why is that? And that is because government made it easier to approve housing, but not easier to build. They've tried a number of things to meet their goals, such as allowing developers to bypass zoning and speed things up, allowing ADUs, having quotas, a one-size-fits all. They've tried a number of things and it just isn't working. But whatever they do, they still have high construction costs, long planning and approval times, excessive fees, and high interest rates. So the the whole problem is that uh, housing just stops. So the reality we face are housing costs remain among the highest in the nation. So my approach would be to cut the red tape and stop construction, lower building costs, support practical housing solutions like accessory dwelling units, the ADUs, and protect neighborhood integrity while allowing smart growth.
Thank you. Raymond, please.
So, California's housing crisis is, I think, fundamentally a supply crisis, and one of the biggest problems that we face that it is simply too difficult, too expensive, and too slow to build housing. If we want to increase production, we have to focus on removing barriers that prevent projects from, penciling out. So, what does this mean? This means streamlining approvals, reducing unnecessary delays, and reforming the local processes that create these sort of uncertainty and drive up costs. As a Fremont City Council member, I've done exactly just that. In fact, just 2 days ago, I supported an ordinance in Fremont that helps streamline the housing approval process and reduce procedural barriers for projects that are already consistent with our housing goals. That means any housing projects that already meet the goals stated in Fremont. It means that we approve them, so we can improve the process. Because the reality is that every day of additional delays adds extra financing costs, adds extra legal costs, and adds uncertainty that it can kill projects entirely. I support, reducing excessive local fees, expanding by right approvals for compliant projects, and encouraging transit-oriented development and modernizing building codes to allow more cost-efficient construction method. Ultimately, my view and my philosophy is simple: if a project meets objective standards and helps address our housing shortage, the government should help move it forward and not create endless obstacles and red tape. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. It's one that's very important. The state has been passing all these laws to streamline zoning, but not to streamline building. And there's a key difference. Having more properties available to build is one thing, but developers need to have the resources to be able to build. That comes from making sure that the timelines are not too long, that fees are not too onerous, and that they have financial assistance to build. In San Jose, last year we passed incentives that reduce the cost to build, to make sure that fees that cities need to collect for impacts are right-sized. And as a result, many new projects have started. So we need to be focusing on making sure that cities don't use fees and timelines in order to get in the way of developing. So I would support legislation at the state level to put a cap on the amount of time that cities can wait to approve projects, to make sure that they don't that there's a cap on the amount of fees they can charge that are required to recover the costs for infrastructure, but not go beyond. In addition, I support a state housing bond and zero interest financing from the state to help housing developers build. And that should be both at market rate and at affordable housing levels, because both are needed in order to get out of our housing crisis.
Thank you. Anne?
Yes, thank you. It's nice to go last because a lot of ideas are shared, and I agree that we need to have imposed timelines within which projects once submitted are scheduled for review, because that's one of the ways that they've been certain municipalities have been avoiding making what can be very difficult decisions, because there's a lot of different pressures that come on, but decisions need to be made when projects are submitted. So that's one area that I think the state legislature can intervene and create timelines. I think there's also opportunity for us we need to impose on the utilities so that they will be actually paying for a lot of the updates that are needed. Our infrastructure is aged to the point that many of these new projects don't get hookups for months and months after they're built, and that's also problematic because we want people to be able to inhabit the new structures that are built. I also think there's an opportunity to build on government land. As an example, the community college system, we have 116 community colleges throughout California. At one point, there was money in the budget to the tune of $1 billion that we were able to access in order to build, because over 50% of our students are housing insecure. There's 2.3 million students in our system, but all that money got clawed back by the governor to balance the budget a few years ago. And so, as an example, there are opportunities where the land cost will not be prohibitive for building, and we need to exercise and look at all those options.
Thank you. Okay, our next question. New developments in Sunnyvale include housing, but lack retail necessary for walkable communities. Is this an issue that the state legislature should intervene in? And if so, what action should be taken? Raymond.
Right. So yes, I do think this is an issue that the state legislature should pay attention to. Although I really believe the state's role in this should be more about providing incentives and planning rather than posing these huge one-size-fits-all solutions. One of the lessons we've seen over the past 2 decades is that housing, it can't exist in isolation. People want neighborhoods where they can walk to restaurants, grocery stores, cafe, parks, all those places, because it's not only better for their quality of life, but also better for the environment because it reduces our dependency on cars. Now, part of the problem we have here is that retail is often financially difficult to include in these new developments, especially with the high construction costs we have. I think the state can help encourage these retail developments by incentivizing more mixed-use development, especially near transit and job centers, and really streamlining approvals for projects, and that include neighborhoods like retail and all that stuff. But at the same time, I really believe we have to be realistic about this. In some cases, requiring too much retail can make projects infeasible and result in no housing being built at all. So, really, the goal should be flexibility and creating communities that are functional and that people can live in, rather than like these huge one-size-fit-all mandates that can unintentionally slow down the production of housing.
Thank you. Anne?
Um, I agree we should be incentivizing the building of small businesses. I am a small business owner, and the vast majority of businesses in California, over 90%, are owned by their small businesses. They are kind of the essential part of our economy for many families, for our communities, for our neighborhoods. And so I think building with an emphasis on retail is critical, because that is also what builds out these neighborhoods. And as has been mentioned, when you can access everything that you need within your neighborhood, there's less need, there's less incentive to utilize a vehicle. There are cities that we can look to as models. Portland, Oregon is the one that comes to mind, because that's where my daughter, who left the state, moved to. And she moved into downtown Portland, got rid of her car, relies on public transportation, walks to the grocery store, walks to the movie theaters. Things that she needs and wants as a 30-year-old are within walking distance, and it works. That's a city and a community that has invested heavily in their public transportation, and it's been well thought out, it's been planned for decades, and they've been implementing. So I do think that we have models that we can emulate and work towards, because we have to focus on our neighborhoods and our communities. I may have brought this up too.
Okay, so the two issues, whether the state should intervene and what I would propose. Number one, yes, I think that the short answer is yes, but the state should intervene, but carefully and selectively. And this is why I feel they should. California has uh, forced housing production. And when they do that, they've already put their toe in the water as far as being involved in it. And so when the state drives housing outcomes, it inherits the responsibility for livability outcomes. But on the other hand, it should not be heavy-handed. It should be incentivized so that different housing areas can look to find out what is good for each of the housing areas that they have. I do believe they should have retail, but you don't want to mandate that necessarily, because when you do, you may have empty storefronts, and empty storefronts are not the way to go. And it kills a project feasibility, and it also increased costs. So what can you do? You can have ground floor retail and neighborhood serving businesses like grocery stores, drugstores, different stores that help a person's needs immediately. It definitely should be a combination of both.
Thank you. Now, David?
Well, I would actually turn that question around and say that the problem is that the state has already intervened too much. The state has mandated that any parcel of land within a certain distance of transit by right can be turned into 100% housing. The result of that is that current commercial spaces are eligible to be demolished and replaced by housing without any need to replace the commercial space. So local governments should have the option to be able to meet the housing requirements based on their own local zoning needs. Having said that, the state also needs to hold cities responsible because there are cities who will use that requirement to drive up cost and prevent housing from getting built. So my feeling is that the state should offer a menu of options for cities. If you are a city that is designated pro-housing by the state because you've demonstrated that you're building housing, you should be able to zone and require that retail is part of the development. If you're a city that is resistant to housing, then you might not be able to have that same flexibility. And so the state has to provide menus of options to comply with our housing goals. Cities like Sunnyvale have suffered under these new policies because Sunnyvale has a really strong has made strong progress in building a walkable, livable, mixed-use downtown. And these new rules will actually allow developers to come in and remove a lot of the retail that makes the downtown strong. And Sunnyvale, as a pro-housing city, should be allowed to continue to require retail. So I think the state should be a partner in helping cities achieve their goals in the way that works best for them.
Thank you. Next question. Under AB 1492, the California Tenant Protection Act of 2019, the maximum allowable rent increase per year is 5% plus inflation capped at 10%. In high-cost areas like ours, rent increases of 7 to 10% annually can be a significant burden and lead to displacement. Do you believe AB 1492 is a fair balance between the needs of tenants and landlords, or should the state move towards lower or higher limits? Do you support extending AB 1492's rental protections when they expire in 2030? Anne, please.
So this is tricky. Costa-Hawkins was passed and it's been taken to the voters twice and has failed. And I think that's one of the struggles that the legislature feels, is that the voters have spoken quite strongly on this topic multiple times now. However, I do believe that particularly in certain regions where the cost of living is so high, we do need to revisit, and I do think we're going to need to continue the law as it is. There are housing is complex, obviously. There's a number of mobile home parks in Sunnyvale, and there are concerns about rent space and putting caps on that. There's legislation that Senator Wahab has proposed this cycle that's going through the legislature right now. So I think we need to look at it. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and not doing so well at saying it. So we need to look at all the different communities and how they're impacted. I also think with the aging population in California, by 2030, 25% of our residents are going to be over the age of 65. And typically when you reach that age, you're then living on a fixed income. So if we have a lot of our seniors that are renting, that's going to be another reason why we need to really take a close look at what we're doing with our rent caps, because our seniors are going to become very vulnerable to the pressures of the market.
Thank you. David, please. We have a random order if you guys haven't noticed yet.
So this issue is a little bit complicated because as I've been learning as a member of the League of Cities board for the last 5 years, is that many cities are concerned that rent control in their city is preventing developers from building new housing. So we need a balance. We need enough new housing to be built to make sure that prices come down. That's the long-term fix to our affordability crisis, is building more units. But in the short term, there is a need to protect renters, and that can be done through certain types of rent control. I was supportive of amending Costa-Hawkins, which unfortunately has fixed the date at which units are eligible to be controlled in cities that want to have rent control for their residents. And I do think it should be a local decision, that local governments decide whether to have rent control. But the state has rules that govern that, and the legislature has not been very good at amending those rules. The result of that is that ballot measures keep getting put on the ballot to overturn Costa-Hawkins as opposed to amend Costa-Hawkins. So I support reform of the rent control rules to try to balance, give cities the tools they need to decide what works best locally for them. And then more importantly, I think the best way to keep people in their homes is to provide rental assistance when people are in trouble. That is the most effective way to keep people from becoming homeless. The amount of money that you spend, every dollar you spend is 4 times more effective for somebody who's housed than dealing with them once they're unhoused. So I think the state should invest more in rental assistance to help people stay home in their apartments.
Thank you. Raymond?
Right. So I think the current bill is strikes a good compromise. It does its job. But I think speaking more about rent control, we have to be really honest and realistic about what rent control actually does. Right. The rent control is not a long-term solution to affordability. Rent control can help stabilize housing for existing tenants, but rent control by itself does not lower rents, nor does it solve the underlying shortage of houses we have right now. I always point out to a recent book that came out, actually came out last year, around close to the time I was sworn into office. The book is called Abundance. It was written by Derek Thompson, Ezra Klein. It's a really wonderful book. It caught the attention of many people, including legislators much higher up in offices than I am. But it really argues, really persuasively argues the fact that, that the affordability crisis, not just in California, but across America, is really fundamentally a crisis of not enough housing. We have a housing crisis because of that. The core issue is really we have made it extraordinarily difficult to build enough housing. And when supply remains constrained, prices continue rising no matter how many temporary restrictions we put in place. So that's my thought about rent control. I think the current bill does strike a good balance, but we have to be realistic that rent control cannot solve the underlying housing crisis that we have right now.
Thank you. Linda?
Okay, so is it working? It is a balance. I would say that it prevents extreme rent spikes, and it gives tenants predictability and stability, and it helps reduce sudden displacement. On the other side, it discourages new rental construction and can push landlords to exit the market and or convert their units. And it would tighten then the supply that would be available. So there are the pros and cons on either one. It's a partial guardrail, but it's not a full solution. So the reality is that neither extreme works. I feel that too high rents hurts renters and too low reduces supply. What I would suggest is have regional flexibility, tie increase to inflation more tightly, encourage long-term leases, and pair protections with supply expansion. Also, should the AB be extended to 2030? Was that a stop? Okay, thank you. Yes, with the reforms. It was an important step to protect renters from extreme increases, but in high-cost areas like Sunnyvale, even allowed increases can be too high for some. So we all want to protect renters, but do we go too far? We've got to make sure that the risk-reducing housing supply and could make the problem even worse. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our sustainability pillar. Do you agree that climate change is a major threat to our planet? If yes, what legislative policies do you support to reduce greenhouse gases? And do you agree with California's target of carbon neutrality by 2045? If no, why not? Linda, please.
All right. Okay, I did my homework on all these things, so I'm not going to read everything, just a little bit. So I believe we should be good stewards of the environment and take care of it. I mean, that's just common sense. But I don't support policies that drive up the cost of living without delivering global impact. California represents a small fraction of global emissions, yet families here are paying some of the highest energy and housing costs in the country. I believe, though, the bigger immediate threat facing California is affordability, housing, energy, and the cost of living. So we need policies that address both without making life harder for working families. So while some of the people focused on the mandates that raise costs, I'm going to focus on the support practical solutions like innovation, efficiency, and responsible development. So do I support carbon neutrality? Well, I support realistic goals, but they have to be achievable and affordable. Setting aggressive targets without a clear, cost-effective path risks hurting families without delivering real results. Thank you.
Anne,
I do support the goal of 2045 carbon neutrality. Um, I think one area that we need to focus on is training the workforce that's going to implement and make that a reality in California. The community college system has taken that on as one of our 4 top pillars or priorities that happened, and that's part of our Vision 2030. So there's a lot of resistance, obviously, by large, big oil, the gasoline companies, et cetera, PG&E. We need to partner and make sure that we are training our workforce to make the transition. We also need to make sure it's done equitably, that the folks who are in positions where they cannot afford to make the changes because they're struggling to make monthly bills, where the state's going to have to step in and provide substance to help them make the transitions that are necessary by 2045. So I am a proponent. It's going to be, and it already is, a very significant battle that's being waged in the state legislature right now. It's going to take people that are willing to stand up to the industry to hold them accountable. It's something I have done through my legal career, and I'm prepared to do it there with the allies that I have, and will continue to form those relationships, because it's going to be an incredibly difficult political challenge in the years ahead.
Raymond, please.
So yes, I do 100% believe that climate change is one of the greatest threats facing not only the Bay Area or California, but really the whole entire world. We're already feeling its impacts, whether it's through rising temperatures, extreme weathers, droughts, sea level rise, everything like that. So I'm really proud to say that Fremont is a leader in this environmental space. Fremont is home, for example, to advanced manufacturing companies like Tandem PV that manufacture solar panels right here in California. And Fremont's always been known as one of the high tech manufacturing places in the world, and we're contributing to do our part and having more renewable energy and helping fight the looming environmental crisis. Our city has also begun transitioning we've already transitioned residents last year to 100% renewable electricity, and this year we're in the process of transitioning businesses to it, and we've done all that while maintaining that Fremont has a balanced budget with no debts. On the state level, I support policies that accelerate renewable energy deployment and expand public transit and encourage, transit-oriented housing development and modernizing our electrical grid. And then finally, real quick, I do really support California's goal of carbon neutrality by 2045. However, I also believe we need to be realistic and serious about how we achieve it. In my view, any credible long-term carbon neutrality must include nuclear energy as part of it. We need to be able to be very open to all effective clean sources of energy, and that includes nuclear energy.
Thank you. David.
I have long believed that climate change is the existential threat of our lifetime that we have to address. I support 2045 neutrality. I'm a little bit concerned that that's too late. So the sooner we can get there, the better. I'm very proud of the fact that I led San Jose to be the first large city in the United States to pledge to be carbon neutral by 2030. We are working towards it, although it is a very, very stretched goal, and there's a lot more that has to be done to achieve it. The state is going to have to step up and help people electrify our communities. I'm interested in legislation to help our utilities convert from natural gas systems to thermal heating systems so that we can use the infrastructure we have for a different kind of heating that's carbon neutral. That's one option. I'm also been talking to PG&E and others about potentially having demonstration neighborhoods where we convert everybody to electric appliances and shut off their gas. We can do that because the amount of money that's being spent to maintain the gas grid infrastructure is actually very high. Also, I think it's time for us to move past the narrative that doing the right thing for the environment is more expensive. We are now at the point where clean energy is cheaper than traditional carbon-based energy. And buying electric vehicles and running electric vehicles over their lifetime is cheaper than having an internal combustion engine vehicle. And unfortunately, we've allowed the narrative to be framed that doing the right thing is actually more expensive. with the right forms of subsidies that our CCAs right now are doing in our community and more from the state through Prop 4 and Cap and Invest, we can get everybody converted and save everybody money.
Thank you. So our transportation pillar. The Connect Bay Area Transit Initiative proposes a 14-year sales tax to prevent substantial service cuts for Caltrain, BART, and other local transit agencies. Without additional funding, Caltrain may need to eliminate weekend service and end service by 9 p.m. on weekdays. BART may close 15 stations and reduce train service by 70%. Do you support this sales tax measure? And if not, what alternative state level funding source would you authorize to bridge the $800 million annual deficit these agencies face? Ooh, that's a lot. Anne, sorry. Anne, please.
Am I starting? Yes. I do support it. I referenced again Portland, Oregon, but I also lived in the city of San Francisco when I went to law school, and I took the train from Santa Clara to San Francisco, and then I used public transportation within San Francisco to get to and from school, back to the train station and back home. It worked. It would be pretty devastating to have these services stop at 9 p.m. at night. And the other cuts, I know in the city of Hayward and Fremont, there's talk about having to close BART stations, which would also be devastating to those communities, people who rely upon public transportation to get to work, to get to school. So we are going to have to invest heavily in our public transportation system, and it has to be a regional approach. And I think efforts are being made now to make these systems more seamless for people so they can move from one region to another or one county to another. I know in the community college system, we've made available to our students at our district free passes, the Clipper passes, so they can move from the bus to the train, et cetera. And we're going to have to expand that. And I think we need to start and support young people in using mass transportation, public transportation, so it becomes a way of life. I know when I was depending on it as a young person, I didn't think twice about it because it worked and I didn't have to worry about my car and the expenses, et cetera. And unfortunately, coming back down into the suburbs where I live now and have for many years, I've fallen away from using it because it doesn't get me where I need to go. So we've got to invest in it.
Thank you. Linda.
Okay. All right, reliable transit is critical to our economy and quality of life, but I don't support solving this problem with another regressive sales tax, especially without the accountability and reform. It really affects harshly on lower income people. We should prioritize transit in the state budget, better utilize existing climate funds, and ensure that the system is operating efficiently before asking taxpayers for more money. I'm committed to keeping transit running, but doing it responsibly. I have a plan that will take care of the $800 million, and it avoids the regressive regional tax. It preserves core services, and it requires measurable reforms. So there are a number of issues that can get to the $800 million per year that they need to fund this without losing any of the services. So, okay. In places like Sunnyvale, transit isn't an option. It's essential to our economy and daily life, but we can't solve this problem with another regressive tax. We need smarter, accountable funding. Otherwise, if it stops, we have longer commute times, increased freeway congestion, and reduced regional job mobility.
Thank you. David, please.
As a board member at VTA and Caltrain, I voted to support the SB 63 and move the regional sales tax measure forward. Public transit is a public good, and we have to understand that public transit is not something that is self-sufficient without investment from the public. Caltrain is actually the highest fare box recovery transit system in the United States other than Amtrak. It gets 30% of its revenue annually from fare box. No other system in the country gets higher. That means there's always public investment to keep transit going. Since transit's a public good, we have to make sure that there's public investment. And that investment will come from the state, but that investment also has to come locally. the types of cuts that we are seeing potentially happening at Caltrain, just as an example, with 11 stations closing and hours being cut, will actually devastate the system. The only reason people ride transit is if it's convenient. It has to be more frequent. It has to have more locations to go. It can't have less. If we cut transit, fewer people will ride it, which will result in more cuts, more revenue loss, and it'll be a death spiral for the system. So we have to make sure that the system survives. It's really, really important that we keep transit throughout the Bay Area and we make it much more convenient to go from system to system. So I support the initiatives of Seamless Bay Area to make sure that our fare structures are consistent and easy to use, that people have schedules, the systems have schedules that match to line up so that people can get from one system to another and get from place to place as easily as possible.
Thank you. Raymond?
So yes, I 100% support this. Public transit is absolutely like essential and crucial to the future of the Bay Area. All the questions we just previously discussed, whether be addressing housing affordability or climate change, none of that can be done if we don't support public transit. In fact, one of my priorities on the Fremont City Council was supporting the completion of the Irvington BART station because I truly believe that transit investments they create long-term economic and environmental benefits for the whole entire Bay Area. Transit-oriented development around stations is one of the best ways we can increase housing supply while also reducing our dependencies on cars and lower greenhouse gas emissions. So it's absolutely crucial that the BART stations stay open. And really, the reality is, we're talking about BART and Caltrain. Them experiencing those kind of like service cuts that are currently being discussed, whether it be closing stations or eliminating weekend services, that's going to be devastating to our most vulnerable populations here in the Bay Area, the working class. I know a lot of people who use Caltrain and BART to go to work, especially on the weekends when they have weekend shifts, and them losing that service is devastating for them because now they have to deal with the high gas prices by going out to buy a car. So I also understand the concerns about taxes, but I really truly believe that maintaining and modernizing our transit system is a huge and crucial necessary investment into the future of the Bay Area. We must have strong public transportation if we want to see the Bay Area not only succeed but thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll move on to our equity pillar. What specific policies would you prioritize to reduce homelessness in the next 2 years? And how would you fund and implement them at the state level? Raymond, please.
So homelessness is one of the most complicated challenges we face, and there is no single solution. Any solution that has to go with it has to be practical and has to be targeting multiple places at one time. In Fremont, we've taken a really pragmatic and results-oriented approach that I believe can serve for a model for the rest of the state. One example is our Housing Navigation Center, which has been really successful in connecting people to permanent housing. In fact, it places people at twice the rate of the national average. So, here in Fremont, we're doing more with our money. Another thing we have in Fremont and that I really support is what we call the overnight parking services. So in Fremont, we partner with our faith-based organizations, whether it be churches, mosques, or anything like that. And we partner with them. We provide a safe parking space for residents to come in and work and stay. Because the reality is, when we talk about homelessness, they're not like a single group. They're very diverse as well. A lot of the homeless people in Fremont, they do have their car, they do have a job that they can go to work, but they need a safe place to stay at night, right? And those sort of services, like we provided to them, they allows them to come into like a church parking lot, allows them to stay the night there, gives them a safe place to stay. And we provide them services for them, and then they leave in the morning, to go to their job or go to their work or whatever. And it's a place for them, to prevent the further backslide of them, and that's really crucial because it's really important that prevention is critical because for anybody at risk, we don't want them sliding further down the path. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David, please.
So as I mentioned before, the number one thing we can do is invest in prevention. Every dollar we spend in prevention is 4 times more effective than a dollar we spent on getting people off the streets once they're homeless. So that is the number one thing that the state has to do is help cities have more resources to provide rental assistance for people so they don't become homeless in the first place. It's also really important to have interim housing solutions because while we're building out a long-term, permanent affordable housing system, we don't want people to become chronically homeless, and it's important to get people off the street quickly. an interim housing system with wraparound services that help people get back on their feet can get people stabilized, get them jobs, and get them moved into more permanent housing. We've seen it work in San Jose. Now that we have 2,000 interim housing units in the city of San Jose that we've built out in the last 5 years, we now have seen a reduction in the number of people on the street by over 30%. And we're seeing a turnover of people in those units and moving into permanent housing. But the big issue is that the state doesn't provide enough resources for cities to be able to do this work. The state has to provide a consistent source of homeless housing assistance program funding, HAP. They had $1 billion 1 year, then the governor proposed cutting it to zero and then increased it to 500 million. Unless we know that there's a consistent $1 billion coming every year, it'll be hard to sustain this work. And then the last thing is there's a bill in the legislature to have that HAP funding not only be for big cities, but to be for small cities below 300,000. Smaller cities are also part of the work, and if only big cities are addressing the problem, we won't address it holistically across the state.
Thank you. Anne.
This is a social issue that's challenging all of us, I think, in our own neighborhoods. I know when I leave to walk my dogs on a particular route, there's a number of RVs that are now parking along a particular park, and then they'll move to another park, and then they'll be back at the other park. And it's something that we're all grappling with. I know I mentioned in the community college system, over half of our students are housing insecure. So a lot of young people are struggling desperately with this issue. And I agree that we need to prevent homelessness, because once people fall into that, it becomes far more expensive to get them housed and self-sustainable. Part of the equation needs to be providing the services, mental health services, drug and alcohol rehabilitation services. When I was a young lawyer, I had the opportunity to observe in the drug court in Santa Clara County that was new, and they provided long-term support for people. There is no quick, easy fix. And so we have to be committed to providing people the services that they need, which includes a variety. It includes interim housing. It includes mental health services, often access to health care. And unfortunately, with the cuts that are coming for HR1, our counties are going to be incredibly hard pressed to provide the services that people need. And as people age and are living on limited income, it's also going to affect that sector of our population drastically. So we're going to have to be willing to make those commitments to the most vulnerable in our communities. And I'll support that.
Thank you. Linda.
All right. This is definitely a big issue in a lot of cities, especially in California. The first step is getting people off the streets quickly through expanded shelter, temporary housing, and mental health services, but it can't stop there. We need accountability, a funding tied to outcomes and not just promises. California is already spending billions on homelessness, and so I'll make sure that money actually gets people housed and back on their feet. Get people off the street fast, stabilize them, and restore accountability in how our taxpayer dollars are spent. So we need emergency shelter expansion, temporary housing, tiny homes, and there are a number of issues, a number of things that can be done. Enforced services and accountability model. Fast track behavioral health treatment, cut through the bureaucracy and require results, and expand interim housing to permanent pathways. So you can't solve homelessness while people remain on the street. So we have to take them off the street quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question in equity is, the housing first model prioritizes getting individuals into permanent housing quickly without preconditions like sobriety or mental health treatment. Do you support this approach, or should there be a legislative change requiring participation in services or sobriety as a condition for housing? David.
The answer is that there should be no preconditions for people getting off the street and into housing solutions. In the temporary housing model that we've built in San Jose, everybody is offered a space and then services are provided on site. The only requirement is if you're in the space, you have to spend 1 to 2 days a week in meeting with your caseworker and figuring out what are the services that you need as an individual. That includes making sure that people have navigation help to find jobs, I'll give an example. We have our new RV parking site that's in my district in North San Jose. I fought really hard to get that there. We have 86 spaces and about 120 people are housed there at any given time. Each month, about 6 or 7 of those people have moved on and found permanent housing, opening spaces for more people to get off the street. The first week after it opened, we had people who were so excited because they now had a mailing address. They could now leave their RV and go to work. They now were able to get an income so that they could afford to move into affordable housing spaces. We need to have those kind of services, but we didn't ask people what their conditions were or whether they needed certain care. We got them on site. As long as they agreed to come on site and follow the rules, they were then treated for whatever services that they needed.
Thank you. Raymond?
Right. So I like the idea behind housing first. It's a pretty obvious idea. The number one reason why people are homeless is because they don't have houses. So giving people houses is one way to treat their homelessness. But I also think we should really be realistic that that housing first alone is not sufficient to solve these issues, especially with people that are dealing with severe addiction or mental health issues. We cannot have housing alone from without services provided. I think it's actually cruel to give people a place to stay without treating the underlying causes on why they became homeless, because a lot of people we're talking about, they're dealing with very severe mental illnesses or addiction treatments, and we must help them on that front as well. My view is that yes, we should continue prioritizing housing placement, but we also need stronger integration of these services, whether it be mental health care, addiction treatments, and in many cases, while yes, voluntary participation does work best, sometimes a lot of people, they need these treatments for them because they are not only a danger to themselves, but they are also a danger to others around them. So I really don't believe this debate should be just framed as housing first versus treatment. We need both options. And in some cases, we need to have people to get them the treatment they need, even if they might refuse that. So those are my thoughts on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Linda?
Okay, so I support people getting into housing quickly. That's important. But housing alone isn't enough for many people, especially those that are struggling with mental illness or addiction, as we've all said. We need a system that connects housing with services and accountability. So the one size fits all approach isn't working. We need solutions that actually help people get back on their feet. So while I support people getting their housing quickly, I don't support a system that ignores the needs for services, treatment, and accountability. The housing sometimes works well for people that have had a quick emergency situation or a job loss, or people with temporary setbacks. That's good. You don't need a lot of the rules for them, but it's not effective for severe mental illness and substance addiction. You need to have the services available to get them moving through the system and help them to get back on their feet. So I support people getting into housing quickly. Like I said, housing alone is not enough. We need to connect people with the services for long-term stability and real outcomes. We need compassion with accountability.
Thank you. Anne?
So I am in agreement that people should be housed as without condition. However, I think the places that we offer the housing needs to be prepared to help people. Alcohol addiction, drug addiction is a disease. You cannot force someone to get sober. It doesn't work. And so you have to create an environment within which people are incentivized or feel safe enough to acknowledge that they have a disease and then provide them the support that they need. One program that I would look to as an example of it works is the Salvation Army. There are a lot of rules that they have at the Salvation Army, and not everybody wants to comply, but those that do have success, become part of an active community. And I have known a number of people that have come through that program and achieved sobriety, have now moved on and become independent. So we've got models that we can look to that work. We're going to have environments where people who have mental health issues can get the proper treatment. There aren't easy fixes to this, and there's not a one size fits all. And again, as our counties are struggling, as clinics are going to close and healthcare and health services are going to become more challenging to provide for people, the state's going to have to step in and make larger commitments to make sure that people have the resources they need to live their best lives.
Thank you. Well, we can all breathe now. Now we can move into the lightning round, or maybe not breathe. So the first question, Anne, and you have 30 seconds to respond. What was your first paid job?
My first paid job was I cleaned a dental office on Sunday mornings in Los Altos. My friend Terry's mother worked for one dentist, and then I got the job working for the other dentist, and we would go in Sunday mornings and clean the dental office. And it was right near El Camino Hospital.
Thank you. Raymond.
Right. My first job was in 2016, right after I graduated high school. I worked as an after-school instructor for elementary school age kids. And actually, an interesting fact: back then, I made more money than I do currently as a Fremont City Council member.
I can't answer. I'm not saying anything. Linda.
Does that include babysitting? I babysat for a number of years before I graduated from high school, and I made enough money. I bought a car, so that was something. But then the first real job I got out of high school was for a chemical corporation as a secretary.
Thank you. David.
So when I was 12 years old, I taught myself how to type. And so when I was in high school, I got a job working at a typing word processing company. Back at the time before people had computers, they brought their manuscripts in, and people like me typed their manuscripts into the computer for them. The most interesting one, and of course, I never really read what I was typing. You just are typing. But the most interesting was one that I typed somebody's book about manatees.
Oh, okay. Anne said children's book. No. Okay. Should the state fund a high-speed rail system in California? Linda. Should the state fund a high-speed rail system in California?
Well, I think high speed would be good to have, not the current one necessarily, because it doesn't go anywhere, but perhaps with some planning and a sane approach, high-speed planning, high-speed rail could be quite good for all of California.
Thank you. David.
Absolutely. We are so far behind the rest of the world in our high-speed rail infrastructure. If you see the number of miles of high-speed rail that China is building every year, it puts us to shame. And we need to continue the push to make sure that we have a connected high-speed rail system across our country.
Thank you. Anne.
Yes, I would love to see it, having just spent some time in Japan and on the bullet train that arrives on time. It was amazing how that system works. I do think we need to prioritize our regional transportation before we commit to building out the high-speed rail in California, because as we can see, our regional system is not working. We've talked a lot about that tonight, and I'm concerned that this is where we spend most of our time in our cars, is in the region where we live and work, and that must be our priority.
Raymond.
Yeah, so I personally would love to see a high-speed rail in California. I would personally love to travel from SF to LA without taking a car or flying a plane. But we have to be realistic about what and actually get it done without all these special interest groups. Fun little fact though, when high-speed rail was on the ballot, I think I was 11 years old. And I was still in elementary school back then. Now I'm 28, a city council member. We still do not have a mile of high-speed rail built. So I do want to see high-speed rail, but we have to actually get it done and not just talk about building it.
Thank you. Next one. What would be the first piece of legislation you will sponsor? David.
Well, there's a whole lot of things I've been thinking about, but I mentioned before the idea of converting some natural gas infrastructure to thermal energy, and I really think that something along the lines of getting our system off of natural gas and into other forms of heating is so important that it's something I would focus on early.
Thank you. Anne.
One of the things I'd like to focus on early on is yet again trying to pass a law that allows the community college systems of California to train nurses of tomorrow. That bill has been brought twice now. It's passed through the Assembly and the Senate. It gets to the governor's desk and it's vetoed. So I think with a new governor, we're going to have an opportunity to pass that. And what we have found is that students that live and students that attend community colleges tend to live where they go to school. They're geographically bound. We need nurses throughout the state of California, and this is an easy, just a really smart solution to that challenge.
Thank you. Raymond.
So healthcare, one of the things I want to see is a public option. For like, I think the past couple of years now, we're letting perfect be the enemy of good. The state legislature is too focused on passing a single payer healthcare in California, and they're trying to aim for the stars instead of doing something realistic. Public option has been passed in states like Nevada and Colorado already. So passing it in California is one way to give many people in California the healthcare that they deserve.
Thank you. Linda.
Okay. I would look at the affordability issue because it just permeates throughout your life, no matter what you do and where you go. The costs are too high, housing is too high, gas is too high, food is too high. Finding out what we can do to lower those costs and make it more affordable for those people in California.
Thank you. Next question. What was the first concert you attended? Raymond.
It was in Bill Grounds in SF. It was Alesso. It's an EDM artist for everybody here that might not know.
Thank you. Anne.
I was fortunate enough my dad's date got sick, and so I got to attend the Neil Diamond concert at the Circle Star Theater in San Mateo, and it was a great show.
Thank you. David.
Well, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and every summer on the 4th of July, there was a huge concert on the mall. And so I got to go to see the Beach Boys perform in front of the Washington Monument with a whole lot of other bands, a day-long concert in the middle of the summer. It was a great experience.
Thank you. Linda.
You probably don't even remember this group. Peter, Paul, and Mary. Anybody? Oh, good. That's the one I went. That's the one I went to in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Next question. Do you support the Medicaid work requirements mandated by H.R. 1? Linda.
I don't even know which one it is. What is it? You mean you have to work in order to get Medicaid? Is that the? Okay. I think that here again, one size fits all is definitely not the way to go. If a person is able to work and be viable, definitely there are opportunities. But if a person can't work and they still need the care, then clearly there should be provisions for that.
Thank you. Raymond.
No. A lot of people, who are on that, they can't able to work, whether it be physical issues. They're unable to go out there. So and we shouldn't be denying healthcare because on the basis of something like that. I think that's just wrong.
I'm sorry. In California, it's Medi-Cal. So for people, I think I probably wrote this question. Medicaid is everywhere else, but in California, it's Medi-Cal. I'm sorry. Anne.
I don't support it. I'm also in favor of Assemblymember Bonta has a bill this cycle that would require companies that are not providing health insurance that they would also contribute to help paying for those that need to have health insurance. So we've got to also, I believe, create incentives for employers of certain size that they would also provide health insurance or coverage to their employees and not depend upon the state and the government to provide health insurance when in fact they can do it.
Thank you. David.
I would just say that in the long term, we should, it's a goal, should be a goal to not tie people's health care to their employers because it ties people down to jobs. It doesn't give them mobility that they need. But the answer to the question is no. I think that the reason for putting that in was to try to keep people from getting health care in order to save money, in order to give tax cuts to rich people. And so I am very much opposed to the changes that were in H.R. 1 related to health care.
Thank you. Next question. Public transit in the Bay Area is run by 27 different transit agencies. Do you support a single lead authority to integrate and expand public transit in the Bay Area? David.
Well, years ago, I thought I did because it seems to make sense. But now that I've served on some boards and I understand the different types of transit that each system operates, it's not quite so simple. A rail system like Caltrain is different than a subway system like BART, which is different than bus systems in other parts of the Bay Area. So we need a seamless transit system and an oversight agency like MTC to make it seamless. But I don't necessarily believe that we will be served by bringing it all into one. And the other issue with bringing it all into one is that we don't get as much local input into how transit works in local communities if you make it less regional and more Bay Area wide.
Thank you. Linda?
Okay. It appears as though it would be better to have it separate and have the different agencies do what they need to do. The thing that I would suggest, you can make a couple of suggestions where the groups are intertwined, interconnected, such as purchasing and perhaps employees going from one type of what's the word I'm trying to use? Going from the trains to the buses to whatever, having the ability to move from one type of job to another. Those are the two things I would have that you could collaborate on comfortably.
Thank you. Raymond?
So no, these organizations they exist separately for a reason. We shouldn't just because like, oh, they're all transit, we smush them up together. Why don't we also then move like the DMV, that's also transit combined with BART station, right? I think that doesn't make logical sense. But I do agree that yes, we need more cooperation between all the various transit agencies. Having greater cooperations, maybe in a higher agency that doesn't combine them together but has some oversight towards them. That's something I can see myself supporting. But I don't support eliminating all of them and shoving them into one big agency.
Thank you. Anne?
I think it does call for more consolidation. I'm not proposing that these different agencies be disbanded or extinguished. However, we are in a really difficult position right now with if the prospect of operating at $800 million deficit annually is going to persist, and if the tax measure passes, I think we have an incredible opportunity where we can consolidate some of the decision making so that we can achieve a more sustainable system that works for people throughout the Bay Area.
Thank you. Let's see. Next question. Do you think it is appropriate for the state to mandate the number of housing units each city must produce or zone? Anne?
I think it's important for the state to set goals, which is they've done. I think it's important that cities be incentivized to meet those goals. I think that, but I think has been talked about this evening, one size doesn't fit all. So I think it's difficult for folks in Sacramento to prescribe exactly what's supposed to happen in a particular locale or community.
Thank you. David?
Well, yes, I think the numbers are important in terms of goals because every city should know that they have an obligation. But those numbers are so aspirational that they're not realistic. As I mentioned before, San Jose is supposed to build 62,000 housing units over an 8-year period. That there's no way that will happen. So it's just important to evaluate cities based on the movement towards a goal and make sure that all cities know that they are responsible for building more housing.
Thank you. Linda?
I think it'd be best to be left up to the cities to decide how they're going to implement the housing. For Sacramento necessarily to come down and say you have to do X number of buildings or whatever, I think is doing a disservice. I think that counting units is not necessarily the benchmark to use, but rather, are the communities sustainable? Is it meeting the needs of the people there? Do we have the right type of housing?
Thank you. Raymond?
Yes, we talked earlier about like, young people not being able to afford to live here in the Bay Area or California anymore. And part of that reason is, the current system we had where, like the state didn't mandate housing, that contributed to the housing crisis we have right now. So the state is now trying to like, fix this issue because clearly when left to the, like, each individual city alone, it wasn't enough to like fix this issue. So having this, and that's where the state should step in. And if the state doesn't like step in, doesn't fix it, then the federal government should step in because this housing crisis is the biggest crisis that is facing us right now.
Thank you. Next question. What is your favorite book? David?
I'll say that the Lord of the Rings series was my favorite books.
Linda.
I want to know his response. Oh, I see. Um, I have so many favorite books. It'd be hard to say. I like the political mysteries, the real who done it, and that they mirror so closely to what's going on that you can almost think they're writing the book uh, about what's going on right now. And there are some, I can't even think of the author's name, but he writes a whole series of books that are just incredible.
Thank you. Anne.
Um, when I was a teenager, I read every book that John Steinbeck wrote, and I just fell in love with John Steinbeck. And those are books that I reread on occasion. Right now, I'm reading The Correspondent, and I'm loving that book as well. So it's hard to pick a favorite, but I'm so grateful that I do continue to read.
Thank you. Raymond.
So as I mentioned, Abundance was a book that came out last year that I really enjoyed. I think it is a really good book, but I think my favorite book series of all time would still be Harry Potter. I enjoyed reading that as a kid. It's what brought me into reading. Before my parents had to pay me money to read. After they introduced me to Harry Potter, I was gone. They had to drag me off from my book to eat lunch and dinner.
Thank you. Next question. Do you support the billionaire tax ballot initiative, Anne?
Yes, I have publicly supported it. However, I feel that the wealthy need to be contributing more to the cost of running our society. However, I am very concerned that the billionaires tax, if it was to pass, will be caught up in the courts. It was short term. It's not a long term solution. But there is growing sentiment by people in the state of California that they want to see something like this. I think it has to happen nationally, though.
Thank you. David.
I support the concept of taxing billionaires. The idea that a 5% tax on billionaires is going to cause hardship when a $200 billion person will end up with basically $200 billion when they're done paying 5%, means this whole argument is kind of pointless. Having said that, I don't support the current tax because it's short term and doesn't provide any money funding for education or some of the other really important things that the state has a shortfall in. So I'm not convinced that this is the right tax.
Raymond.
So yes, I support the rich, paying their what they owe to society. But this tax is not the way to do it. I've always mentioned, this tax is poorly, it's a poor idea. There's no the enforcement mechanism isn't entirely clear. What I've always advocated for before is we should have more higher taxes on luxury goods, for example, on yachts being able to dock inside California's various beaches and on private planes and things like that.
Linda.
Okay, while I don't support the billionaire's tax, I do support that everyone should pay their fair share. I think that what could ultimately happen is that the billionaires decide I'm going to leave. They take their money and their business with them. And then you have a lot of people that are displaced because they have no jobs. Then it goes to the next tier. And before you know it, the money that they're looking for is going to be coming down and visiting you. And I really don't think that that's the way to do it. Fair share, yes. Offshore accounts, hidden accounts, absolutely.
Now you can really breathe. That's it. So thank you all for coming and sharing your night with us. These forums, they're a lot of work to do and prepare and get ready for, but they're a lot of fun to learn about people. Of course, I love the book question, but that's another story. So thank you for your time. Good luck and be well. Thanks.
Very nicely done. Thank you.